You ever notice how when people get into arguments, they talk like it's a championship fight, gloves up, words flying, everybody's swinging for the knockout. And here's the trap we all step into. We think arguments are about winning. We think if we get the last word, we've won. If we talk faster, louder, sharper, we'll overpower the other person. If we pull out the best piece of evidence, the cleverest line, the most brutal comeback, will be crowned the victor. But that's an illusion. It's smoke and mirrors. Because the second your voice goes up, respect goes down. Think about that. Every time your tone sharpens, their guard goes up. Every time you roll your eyes, they roll their defenses higher. You can't argue someone into respecting you. You can't argue someone into loving you. And you can't argue someone into understanding you. Arguments feel like battles you can win, but they're actually traps you fall into. You're swinging your fists in the dark, thinking you're in control, but the more you swing, the less you see. Now, I get it. I've been there. I've been in the middle of an argument where I just knew. I was right. And I thought, if I could just explain this a little clearer, if I could just push a little harder, they'll get it. But what happens? The harder you push, the further they back away. You talk louder, they shut down. You explain more, they dig deeper into their corner. And suddenly, it's not about the truth anymore. It's about pride. It's about ego. It's about, I can't let you win because if I do, I lose. And that's the illusion. That's what makes arguments so dangerous. They trick us into thinking the finish line is proving the other person wrong. But the real cost, it's connection, it's peace, it's trust. Because here's the truth, nobody wins an argument. Nobody. You might get the last word. You might get the verbal checkmate. You might even walk out feeling like you crushed it. But what did you really win? Did the other person whack away, saying, wow, I feel so close to them right now? Did they walk away respecting you more? Or did they walk away resenting you quietly? Arguments don't build bridges, they build walls. And every time you walk into one thinking you're going to win, what you're actually winning is another brick on that wall. You know what I'm talking about. Think about the last argument you had with a spouse, a friend, a co-worker. You proved your point, sure. Maybe you even shut them down. But afterward, how did it feel? Did it feel like victory, or did it feel hollow? That hollow feeling is the invoice for winning an argument. Because yes, you proved you were right, but you lost something bigger. See, the hidden cost of arguing is connection. And connection is everything. Because at the end of the day, what matters more? Being right or being respected? Being right or being understood? Being right or being loved? Most of us chase the wrong win. We chase the temporary satisfaction of proving our point instead of the lasting satisfaction of protecting the relationship. And that's why arguments feel like fire. They burn hot, but they leave scars. Now, here's where most people get stuck. They think, well, Jefferson, what am I supposed to do? Just roll over, just let people say whatever they want and never defend myself? No, I'm not saying you stop standing up for yourself. I'm not saying you stay silent while someone steamrolls you. I'm saying you stop confusing arguing with resolving, because those two are not the same thing. Arguing is combat. Resolving is connection. Arguing says, I want to win. Resolving says, I want us to win. That's the shift. That's the illusion I want to pull the curtain back on. Because the second you stop believing that arguments are about winning, you start realizing they're actually about losing. And usually, you lose the things that matter most. So let's talk about the cost. Because if you don't know what arguments cost, you'll keep spending like you've got an unlimited bank account. But you don't. Every argument withdraws from your trust account, your respect account, your love account. And you might not feel it immediately. You might feel like you got away with it. But little by little, those accounts drain. And eventually, you're overdrafted. The relationship is empty, and you can't figure out why. Arguments aren't free. They come with a price tag. They cost you peace. They cost you intimacy. They cost you influence. You can prove your point, but if the other person leaves the conversation feeling smaller, unheard, or unloved, you've paid with something much bigger. I've seen this play out in courtrooms. I've seen lawyers win arguments and lose the jury. They won the logic, but they lost the people. And if you've ever been in a relationship where arguing was the norm, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can win 10 arguments and still lose the relationship. And that's the trap most people don't see. We think arguing is strength. We think volume equals victory. We think sharpness equals power, but it doesn't. Real strength is restraint. Real power is presence. Real influence is choosing peace when you know you could choose war. That's why the cost is so high, because you might walk away feeling like you've gained ground, but what you've actually lost is goodwill. And goodwill is the soil every relationship grows in. Without it, nothing survives. So the question becomes, what do you really want? Do you want to be right in the moment, or do you want to be right with the person? Do you want to crush them, or do you want to connect with them? Because you can't have both. And when you're standing in that moment, when the temperature rises, when you feel the words pushing at your lips, what you choose in that split second decides whether you're building or burning. You know what blows my mind? How often people think the solution to arguments is another argument. Like, if you just come up with the magic sentence, the perfect mic drop comeback, suddenly the other person is going to stop, clap their hands, and say, wow, you know what? You're right. I give up. You win. When has that ever happened? Never. Because people don't stop arguing because they lose. They stop arguing because they feel heard. The reason this phrase is so powerful isn't magic. It's not some JD mind trick. It's psychology. It's biology. It's how the human brain is wired. Let me break this down for you, because once you understand the why, you'll start to see just how much leverage you have in every heated conversation you step into. When two people are in conflict, their brains stop operating on logic and start operating on survival. That's why people say things in arguments they don't even believe. That's why they exaggerate, twist words, drag up the past, because their nervous system is in fight or flight. They're not processing facts, they're protecting themselves. And when someone is in that survival mode, what's the one thing they're craving more than anything else? Safety. Now, how do you give someone safety in a conversation? Not by proving them wrong, not by shouting louder, not by cornering them with logic. You give them safety by showing them, I see you, I hear you, you're not invisible here. And that's exactly what "you might be right" does. It signals to their brain, you're not under attack. And when the brain feels less attacked, it lowers its weapons. That's why the phrase works. It calms the nervous system. Think about a courtroom for a second. If a lawyer stands up and attacks a witness, the witness goes rigid. They get defensive, short, combative. But if the lawyer acknowledges, even briefly, that the witness has a valid perspective, what happens? The witness softens, the jury leans in, the tension drops. It's not weakness, it's strategy. And the same strategy applies in everyday life. Now let's apply this to real scenarios, because I want you to see how versatile this is. Say you're in traffic, someone cuts you off, rolls down their window, and starts screaming at you like you just ruined their life. What's your instinct? To scream back, to defend yourself. But imagine instead you calmly gesture and mouth the words, "You might be right." What happens? They're disarmed. They expected a fight. They got acknowledgement, and suddenly the fuel in their tank disappears. Or let's talk about family, because that's where arguments get messy. Maybe it's Thanksgiving dinner and your uncle decides to unload his controversial opinion about politics, and now the whole table is tense. You're about to jump in with your counterpoint, but instead you say, "You might be right." What does that do? It doesn't mean you agree. It means you're not going to let this dinner turn into a battlefield. You just bought peace without sacrificing your values. How about in parenting? Your teenager storms into the room saying, "You never trust me. You don't let me do anything." Your instinct is to argue, to list all the times you've given them freedom to prove them wrong. But if you pause, breathe, and say, "You might be right," you just handed them the one thing teenagers crave: validation. And you know what? After they calm down, after their nervous system feels safe, they'll actually be more open to hearing your reasoning. Let's get even closer to home. What about marriage? You're exhausted, you've had a long day, and your spouse looks at you and says, "You don't appreciate me anymore." That stings. That makes your chest tighten. You want to defend yourself. You want to remind them of the last 10 things you did to show your love. But what happens if instead you lean in and say, "You might be right"? You've just chosen connection over combat. You've said, "I'm willing to see myself through your eyes." And 9 times out of 10, that opens the door to a deeper conversation instead of a shallow fight. See, what's happening in all these scenarios is the same thing. That little phrase works like a release valve. The pressure builds, emotions boil, the argument is about to explode, and then you say it. "You might be right." And the air hisses out of the balloon. The tension drops. And once the tension drops, clarity walks in. Let me pull back even further, because this is bigger than just 3 words. What you're really doing here is shifting the dynamic of the conversation. Arguments are battles for dominance. I'm right, you're wrong. My voice matters, yours doesn't. That's the game. And as long as both people are playing, nobody wins. But when you say, "You might be right," you're flipping the game board over. You're saying, "I'm not playing that game." You're not submitting. You're transforming. You're moving the conversation from dominance to dignity. And here's the kicker: people will almost always mirror back the energy you give them. If you come in hot, they'll come in hotter. If you come in defensive, they'll double down. But if you come in acknowledging, calm, open, they'll eventually meet you there. It might not be instant, but it changes the trajectory of the conversation. This works in business too. Imagine negotiating a deal and the other side accuses you of being unreasonable. Instead of snapping back, imagine saying, "You might be right." You just gave them dignity. And in business, dignity is leverage, because when people feel respected, they're more willing to collaborate. Now, let me make this clear. This is not about people pleasing. This is not about avoiding conflict at all costs. This is about choosing a smarter tool, because arguing is a hammer. You just swing and swing, hoping to force things into place. But you might be right. That's a key. It unlocks doors. It turns resistance into receptivity. That's the secret most of us miss. It's not about overpowering, it's about disarming. It's not about shutting them down, it's about lowering the temperature. It's about shifting the energy of the conversation. And that shift comes down to one phrase, a phrase so simple, so ordinary, you'll probably hear it and think, that can't be it. But it is. You want to know what it is? It's 3 words. You might be right. Now stay with me, because I know what just went through your head. You're thinking, "Jefferson, are you kidding me? I'm not about to tell somebody who's wrong that they might be right. Doesn't that make me weak? Doesn't that make me a pushover?" No. And here's why. Those 3 words are not about surrendering the truth. They're about surrendering the fight. There's a difference. You might be right doesn't mean I agree with you. It doesn't mean I'm wrong and you're right. It means I'm willing to acknowledge your perspective. I see that you have a point of view, and I respect the fact that you believe it. That's it. And when people feel acknowledged, when they feel like their voice is not being drowned out, their need to keep swinging disappears. I've used this in courtrooms. I've used it with juries. I've used it with opposing counsel. And let me tell you, nothing drops the temperature of a heated exchange faster. Because when someone is ready to go 12 rounds, and instead of swinging back, you say, "You might be right," you knock the wind right out of the fight. You take away their fuel. Think about it. Why do people argue? Because they want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to feel like their perspective matters. So when you give them that, even if it's just 3 words, the fight loses oxygen. It's like blowing out the match before it turns into a fire. Now, I know some of you are skeptical. You're thinking, "Jefferson, what if they're absolutely wrong? What if what they're saying is outrageous, offensive, completely false? I'm supposed to just let that slide?" Here's the beauty of this phrase. "You might be right" doesn't lock you in. It doesn't commit you. It leaves space. It's not "you are right." It's "you might be right." It's open-ended. It buys you breathing room. It puts the brakes on the runaway train of conflict. Because here's the bigger truth. Once the emotional temperature comes down, then logic can walk in. You can't reason with someone whose adrenaline is through the roof. You can't get through to someone who's operating in fight or flight. The brain doesn't process well when it's under fire. So what you're doing with this phrase is not abandoning your truth, you're making room for it to land later. Let me give you an example. Say you're in a workplace conflict. A co-worker is in your face, frustrated, telling you that you completely dropped the ball on a project. They're heated. They're raising their voice. Your first instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to push back. But what happens when you do that? They get more defensive. The energy escalates. You both dig in deeper. But if instead you look them in the eye and calmly say, "You might be right," suddenly their brain goes, "Wait, what?" The tension drops. They weren't expecting that. They were expecting resistance, not acknowledgement. And because you gave them acknowledgement, they feel less need to keep pushing. Or in a relationship, your spouse is upset, saying, "You never listen to me. You don't care about how I feel." You're tempted to argue, to say, "That's not true. I do listen," but you know where that leads to another spiral. So instead, you say, "You might be right." And what does that do? It opens the door. It doesn't confirm their entire narrative, but it tells them, "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to hear you." That single shift can take an argument destined to last all night and end it in minutes. See, the brilliance of "you might be right" is that it speaks directly to the human need for dignity. Every person wants to feel like they matter, like their thoughts have weight. When you say those words, you're handing them dignity without giving away your truth. That's powerful. That's influence. But here's the catch: you have to mean it. You can't say, "You might be right," with sarcasm dripping off your voice. You can't roll your eyes and mutter it under your breath. Tone matters. Delivery matters. Because if you weaponize it, if you use it as a dagger instead of an olive branch, it won't work. The phrase only works when it's authentic, when you genuinely pause, breathe, and offer it as a gesture of respect. Now, let's put this in real life. Your teenager comes at you with that teenage fire. You don't understand anything. You feel the heat rise. You want to snap back, prove your point, remind them of all you've done for them. But you stop, you take a breath, and you say the phrase, neutral tone, calm body language, and suddenly, boom, the storm starts to lose air. Because when you don't give the fire more fuel, it has nowhere to go. And that right there, that choice, just saved you from hours of tension in your own home. That's power. Let me show you another angle. At work, you've got that one colleague who loves to push your buttons. Passive, aggressive comments in meetings, always trying to one-up you. Normally, you'd bite, you'd fire back, try to prove you're not someone to mess with. But you don't. You look at them and you use the phrase, and then you stop. Silence. Do you know what silence does? It makes the other person sit with their own words. It shines a mirror back at them. And most of the time, they'll retreat because you didn't give them the fight they were hoping for. And here's the deeper truth. This isn't about winning. It's not about making the other person feel small. It's about protecting yourself, protecting your energy, protecting your peace, protecting your relationships. Because let's be honest, most arguments, they're not about the thing being argued. They're about power, control, proving a point. But you don't need to prove. You need to preserve. Preserve your dignity. Preserve your calm. Preserve the relationship if it matters to you. That's what this phrase does. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But Jefferson, what if the other person doesn't stop? What if they keep pushing? Good question. Because sometimes they will. That's where your body language steps in. You pair the phrase with calm eye contact, a relaxed tone, and then this is key, you don't add anything extra. No explaining, no over-justifying. The more you say, the more they have to grab onto. The less you say, the more they're left holding their own frustration. It's not about shutting them down harshly. It's about not climbing onto their stage. And let's get real, does this take practice? Absolutely. You're not going to nail it the first time. You'll slip. You'll react. You'll wish you said it sooner. That's okay. It's progress, not perfection. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you're rewiring your brain. You're proving to yourself, I can do this. I don't have to match their fire with fire. And over time, it becomes muscle memory. So here's what I want you to walk away with today. The next time you feel that heat rising, that urge to snap back, stop yourself, breathe, ground your feet, relax your shoulders, and then deliver the phrase. Short, steady, simple, and then let it sit. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't try to rescue the moment. Let the power of your calm do the heavy lifting. Because here's the truth, you're not just ending an argument. You're sending a message to the other person, to yourself. To anyone watching, the message is, oh, I value peace more than winning. I value clarity more than chaos. And I'm not afraid to hold my ground without raising my voice. That's leadership. That's strength. That's what people remember. And maybe the most important thing I'll leave you with is this: arguments don't have to be destructive. They can be moments of growth. They can be moments where you actually earn respect instead of losing it. But only if you choose calm. Only if you resist the pull of the fight. And only if you use the tools that let you walk away with your head high, not your heart heavy. So the next time you're in that heat, remember this phrase. Use it. Trust it. Let it carry you through. And watch what happens, not just in the argument, but in your confidence, in your relationships, and in the way people look at you. Because when you learn how to end an argument without losing yourself, you don't just win that moment, you win back your peace. And that's the real victory. That's how you shut it down. That's how you take control. And that's how you lead with calm, even when the room is on fire.